Why do your kids hold it together at their dad's house, but fall apart at yours? It's not because they respect him more. It's because you're the safe one. In this episode, we talk about what's really going on when kids have meltdowns after transitions, how to respond without taking it personally, and practical ways to set boundaries and take care of yourself in the middle of it all. If you've ever wondered if you're failing as a mom, this conversation will give you the clarity and hope that you need. Joining me today, we have Diana, Loretta, and Charlotte. They are all divorced Christian women, and we are going to be talking about raising resilient kids and building connections with our kids that matter. So we're going to kick off by talking about parenting kids who are living in two radically different emotional worlds. And how we do these podcasts when I have a panel like this is I put out a bunch of questions, and then our panel kind of picks and chooses which questions they want to focus on themselves. And then whatever is left over, I might answer. So the very first question that we had, no one took it. So I'm going to actually address the first question. And then I'm going to let you guys take over after that. So first of all, welcome, all of you guys. Why don't you say hi, just so everyone knows there's other people here.
Hi.
If you're on YouTube, you can see it's obvious that there's other people here, but many of you are listening on the podcast, and so you can't really see everyone. But
Natalie, I could ask you the first question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you do that. Okay.
All right, here we go. Diana here. Natalie, this one's for you. How do you handle it when your kids behave one way with their dad and very differently with you? And why do you think kids often feel safe enough to fall apart with mom?
Yeah, this is a big one. And we have talked about this a lot in different places. And I think, if you did a quick Google search, you might find this information out there as well. But kids pick up on emotional climates and they adjust themselves accordingly because they're just like us. They're trying to keep themselves emotionally safe. So if dad is the less emotionally safe parent, they're going to do what's called masking or, like hiding who they really are in order to make sure that they can keep themselves safe. They're going to hold themselves together. If they sense that there's unpredictability or that they could be criticized, they're going to keep their feelings tucked inside to avoid that conflict. So that can look on the outside like they are well-behaved, like they're easygoing, or even like they're detached. But then with the safer parent, they tend to have meltdowns. Why? Because they know that your love is not going to disappear just because they have a meltdown. You're the one who has proven over time to be safe enough for all of those raw, messy feelings that they're having. So when they have bottled up stress from school or from transitions from home to home or interactions with dad, that's going to come spilling out on you. That is because when you notice when they come home from dad's house, they're elevated emotionally. That's what's happening. It's not because they respect him more or that they're trying to take advantage of you. It's because they trust their relationship with you. And if you think about this, when you had a stressful day, you probably keep it together for your coworkers and your boss or the people at church, right? But then when you get home with someone safe, that's when you maybe fall apart and might maybe cry. Well, kids are the same way. Their nervous systems need a place to release that pressure, and you are that place. So there's my answer. All right. Next question. What does it look like to manage? Now we're going to talk about our own management of this exhaustion of being this safe parent while still showing up, with all the patience that our kids need, especially when they act out when they return from dad's house.
Yeah, for me, one of the game changers was when I started looking more into something I had heard about and I had kind of seen about with PTSD and CPTSD recovery, about polyvagal theory. And I actually, even though my theology was changing as I was parenting my kids after the divorce, I would see these big behaviors. And one of the things I was still praying about, that I was still just like believing that whatever theology I came to land on, that God would really I don't know, like rescue us from these horrible behaviors that I would see. And I didn't know what to do about them with all the theology, the Christian parenting stuff that I was leaving behind. It wasn't helping, right? And so I kept praying that God would show me how to manage this. And I feel like he brought us to a therapist for our family that also really heavily relied on polyvagal theory for like difficult behaviors in kids. And so we started having family counseling, but then she would work especially with my youngest, who at the time was 6 years old. At that point, like right after their dad moved out. And he was really violent. Like I had another kid like 3 years older, and then I had some younger, like teenage kids. But my youngest, he would do stuff in his meltdowns. Like one time I was driving down the road and he unbuckled from the back of the minivan and took this giant Richard Scarry book and just started whacking me on the head as
Oh,
I was
wow.
driving. He did stuff while I was driving a lot, but that one I kind of drove into the side of somebody's yard and it was horrifying. Someone almost hit us.
Wow.
So it was like that level of meltdowns he would have if he was triggered. And the polyvagal stuff helped because like it kind of explained it without making it a moral failing of my kid or a parenting problem of mine. And the Christian stuff for people that were raised themselves or trying to raise their kids with all the Christian parenting stuff, it's like they have to obey immediately. Like I heavily relied on all the Dobson and
Hmm.
similar stuff where it's like they shouldn't question, they should never even talk back. And then after my kid's dad moved out, it was like my good little kids that were, I think they were always kind of frozen and afraid to do anything when he was in the house. He left and it was like everything fell apart. Like, anyway, so they were all having big behaviors. And
Hmm.
the thing that helped me was seeing that every big behavior has a reason. And it's not like they're sinful, it's not that they're bad. Or that I'm being too permissive, all that stuff that I was programmed with. It was more like they have some kind of need that they are really trying to fill. And even the
Hmm.
worst behaviors, like sometimes my kids would take something precious of another kid's, like the most precious thing they could ever find, and like rip it up or throw it out or something when they were mad at each other. And it was just these, I don't know, these bigger things, hurting each other, hurting me. And so with this therapist and with diving into this, just looking at how their nervous systems were acting out, because polyvagal is all about your nervous system is responding to a threat. And a lot of times the emotional threat, like of a disappointment, if, their dad used to kind of trick us a lot and he would say, hey, you guys, we're going to go on this fun trip on Saturday. And we would get excited all week. And then that morning, right at the last minute, like one of his patterns was he would be like, someone didn't put the dishes in the right way, or someone forgot to flush the toilet, like some petty thing. He would take away this whole big fun day trip that we had been waiting for. And so my kids, if they had disappointment after they left, that's where these huge behaviors would come out. So anyway, I started to see like, if it's that they're going into fight or flight, like a watchdog, and just like growling and snarling and doing all these crazy acting out behaviors, um, I could sort of like keep myself regulated if I thought my poor little kid, like their nervous system is taking over their body right now, and they are just in the throes of this thing. And so not like that I was explain or like not excusing it, but that gave me the mental capacity to be able to see not like a sinner who's possessed by demons or whatever Christian stuff I thought before, but more like they are hurting so bad and
Hmm.
they can't even hear if I go into like consequences or talking or whatever. Like they need containment. They need like some kind of nervous system regulation from me.
Yeah.
And that was the game changer. Like because you can learn skills. I think even if you just start looking online or listen to podcasts, you can learn skills to help co-regulate. And for me, it was so healing to think my kids, they're hurting, but they're normal. They're just normal human beings. They're not like these wretched, broken down sinners that are like obeying Satan, because
Yeah.
that's what I used to think,
Yeah.
about any kids who acted out. It was more like, oh my gosh, I need to nurture them, almost like if they were injured and they're like recovering from like surgery.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of saw it. So I hope that all makes sense.
Yeah. So, Loretta, can you tell us what strategies helped you to stay calm when things like this were happening in your family? And do you have any examples that you can give us?
Yeah, and if you want, we could even go into the next question because I can tie them both together.
Yeah, that is the next question.
Oh, okay, sorry. So, when you talked about, I love what Charlotte said because it was so similar to things that I went through, but I had older kids. So, 10 to 16. So I had seen in my family the little kids that come back dysregulated and they act out immediately, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with the older kids, they'll hold it in a while and fester it and ruminate about it. And then they'll like blindside you upside the head on some random day and you're not expecting it because it's like a few days out when they get stirred up or they're being told things that how you should parent, criticizing your parenting, how you should be treating their brother's going to go to hell if he doesn't straighten up, those kinds of things. So before I could show up as the safe parent, I had to reframe my thinking again and again and again. And one of them was just even to file, I had to come to terms with, I'm going to have these kids away from me for a whole week at a time, week on, week off in the summer. And that just broke my heart. I had the hardest time just even wrapping my brain around that. And I had a lot of fear around it. But once I reframed that, I thought, oh, I can have some downtime. I'm always the parent that has to be on all the time. I could go visit my sister. I could, so I got really excited and it shifted my brain to where I could actually step out and do that filing, right? But shortly after that, that time off never happened, right? So even when they were going over there, I was getting these texts about what was going on, and I'd get the movie, and I would sit down, and I'd be like, my glass of wine, I'm going to have this one night alone, and it never. It would be, text back and forth with the drama,
Yeah,
and I'm like. Right. And I actually wrote into you in the Flying Free forum. And I said, what do I do? I was just so mad that I didn't get to have, it's unfair. Right. And you said, and I take this with me today. I think I said it to myself yesterday. I'm the parent that shows up. That's who I get to be. And so, anyway, so I took that and, the kids, the other thing I had to reframe was the kids should not behave this way. Charlotte talked about that, right? They shouldn't be acting this way. They need to be lined up in a row at church. And I had the cops at my door a few times. I would walk in, I think I've shared this before, to my counselor and be like, my life is a Maury Povich show. How did this happen, right? It was crazy. And things that I just never, how did I get here? But when I started realizing they're on the same journey that I was on, they have to, their brains need to develop. They're struggling with the programming of the legalism and the black and white thinking. And so when they would act out and come at me, when I was successful, I wasn't defensive. I would be curious. And I'll remember, when I started to go back and think about these questions, it's hard because you ask for specifics. There's just these visions, kind of like when you're in the middle of the marriage, right? You have these visions of, I was standing on the back patio and this kid was coming at me and I was like, what do I do? And I was being defensive and I was arguing. And then, or I was on the steps in the garage and this other one was coming at me. And in the middle of it, I'm like, I'm not even talking to him. I'm talking to my ex, right? And so I would stop in the middle and I would say, oh, what do you want me to do? And I would start asking questions. Well, what do you think the solution is here? What would you like me to do? Do you want him to move back in here? Do you want us to get remarried? Do you want to give your room up and go back and live with your son or with your brother in his little room? Like, what do you want? Oh, no, I don't want that. Right. So then when I started being curious and not defensive, and yes, I'm a bad parent sometimes. I know I'm trying. Right. Then we were able to get into I know the exact time with my oldest, who was parentified like crazy. I got to talk to him about boundaries. And he always thought he needed to fix it. He was going to fix it. He was going to be the hero. He was going to come in and solve all the problems that his dad presented. And he was going to be the dad to his brother. That's like where the crazy came in. And I said, all of your other three brothers have figured this boundaries thing out. Do you want to know what they're doing? And I would share that with him. And it took him a while to figure it out, but he did. But I couldn't be regulated, like Charlotte said, until I reframed how I was being. And one of the things that I have to say is the giving myself permission to trust myself as a parent and not be a people pleaser, to people around me telling me how I should be parenting when my kids are not behaving appropriately. That was a game changer. I mean, I was turning myself into a pretzel trying to be, I would do things that just didn't work. And I would go into my counselor and I would say, he's pulling away from me. I mean, I had a kid who would leave in the middle of the night and walk around town at 2 a.m. And finally I asked him, why do you do it? And he would say, my brain doesn't turn off at night. And when I walk, it calms me down. I had the cameras, the alarms. I mean, I was going to solve this. This wasn't going to happen. I was going to follow him. I was exhausted. And I finally just had to turn loose. And I mean, it's not like you can't control a 14-year-old who doesn't recognize discipline anyway. But he started coming back to me emotionally. He wasn't pulling away from me anymore. And he talked to me. And we went on walks. And he shared things with me. And I have to say, 4 years out, I just had a win. He asked me if he could talk to a counselor because he figured he needed to get things figured out in his life. Wow. And that was this past week. And I begged my counselor, he just wanted someone that he could trust that had wisdom, that wasn't judgy. He said, I have people in my life, but they're only one way. That's the way he said, they're not open-minded. And I begged my counselor, who does not take kids, to please talk to him. And he did, because I said, you're the only man I trust that's not going to be like trying to preach. And even though he is a preacher, at him. Oh, wow. And so I just have to say, it's that reframing. If you find yourself, I just encourage anyone, if you find yourself just living in fear, afraid, I have very valid fears. They're going to kill themselves. They're going to end up on drugs, and they're going to not be able to come back because the drugs are going to destroy their brain. They're never going to be able to hold a job or have friends, or worried about what everyone else is thinking. Those are very, very valid fears. But when you're parenting and you can't reframe, when you're parenting from that, it's a non-starter. You're never going to, you're jumping in the pool with them and you're going to drown too. Mm-hmm. So, really learning to reframe is key.
Yeah. So good. So how do you explain or respond to bad behavior coming from dad when your kids bring it up to you? Like, when I go pick up my boys, doesn't happen so much anymore, but it happened all the time before. And I'm, 8 years out from my divorce. But when the kids would get in the car and they would just gush all the bad stuff that happened. So how do you explain or respond to that without confusing them or putting them in the middle?
I'm going to jump in and say a little bit, and then I know Charlotte's got more to say on this too, but I'm going to kind of give just a short overview answer. And one thing I've done with my kids is I'll do this with anybody. It's like, your dad's being your dad. You're being you. I'm being me. Now, we're all human beings who have our own personalities. We've had our own struggles in life. We've gone on our own journey, things that have happened. We've all had different messages taught to us in school and church and by our friends and all of this. And it's this cocktail of stuff. And then this is who we are. So your dad's just being your dad. That's how he knows how to be. He doesn't know a different way. Is it coming from health or brokenness? Maybe both sometimes, depending on how he's behaving. But he's a human being. I'm not showing up perfect. You're not showing up perfect. He's not showing up perfect. And it looks different for all of us. Now, is it sometimes confusing and hurtful and frustrating? Yeah. But let's at least just start with seeing we're all human beings trying to figure it out, and none of us get it quite right. And that way we're teaching our kids to make space for letting other people be them. You know, as my sister said in the 90s, let them. And Mel Robbins just ran with it. I don't know how she found out my sister said that. But we're teaching our kids, let them, in a way, like, I know what affects you because you're experiencing it. It feels like things are happening at you. And on the other hand, we can't change that person. And so in some ways we have to let them. And so now, can I help you come up with strategies for how you want to regulate your own emotions or respond or navigate what it's like to be around your dad? Do you want to talk about it? So anyway, that's kind of my high level overview on that. I'll turn it over to Charlotte.
Yeah. Well, can I just jump in here too
Yeah.
and just say, and they get to, that just because you're accepting that this is who they are doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. Doesn't mean that you have to say, well, then that makes their behavior okay or anything like that. You get to decide, like, if we can let our kids know, you get to decide, is that behavior okay to you or not? You get to decide. And it's about, because I'm thinking about my family of origin. Bad behavior was happening, but I didn't get to decide it was bad behavior. I was told this is right behavior. For a parent to do this is right because they're the parent. So they get to do whatever they want to do. And so I grew up with this, like, basically it's gaslighting, telling me that I can't have even though I thought, I don't think that's good behavior. I don't think that's right. But then, I guess parents do. It is right for parents to do that. That really messes with a kid's brain. So I think letting them know, you have the freedom to decide if you think that, like, do you think that's good behavior? You know,
Right,
you get to have your
right.
own opinion about that.
Is that a helpful behavior? Is it a hurtful behavior? Is it bringing clarity to your life, or is it bringing confusion? And ask them some of those questions. And then I still like coming back to it, like, how do you want to navigate it? And if they don't have any ideas, you can be like, would you like to brainstorm some ideas on how to navigate this? And then another thing I'd give my kids is, you have choices. I give this to everybody. I give it to myself. I'll give it to all of you listening. You always have choices. You have choices. Loretta's kid had a choice. Do you want to jump out the window? Or I don't know. My kid went out the window when he went out in the middle of the night. I don't know if yours did. You want to go out the window and go to Walmart or walk around town in the middle of the night? I mean, that's a choice. There's other choices too, but dealing with your dad, there's always choices too. Let's think about some.
Yeah.
You're right, because we don't condone hurtful behavior, but we realize we can't control other people. And now what can we teach our kids to take ownership for, so they can learn how to be emotionally responsible, so they can learn how to navigate difficult people, because they're going to have to do it the rest of their life anyway. This is a great training ground.
Yeah. Yeah. So good.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I mean, I echo all of that, like trying to frame it so that the kids could see like the real behavior instead of getting caught up, because my kids, like, I think most when they're coming out of this situation, I had 5 kids and they would all do the classic thing of defending their dad and going on instead of like being confused or being angry at his bad behaviors, or hurtful behaviors, stuff like that. They would take it out on me all the time. And I mean, our situation, it was pretty unique because my ex just moved away. So I had the kids full time. he said that he didn't want any overnights or any like real custody schedule. He just wanted to visit them now and then he moved across the country. So they were with me. They barely saw him for the past 3 years, just a couple visits when he flew up here. And so even so, they would just kind of spiral. Things would happen at home that would trigger them, or, a certain day, a certain place we went, whatever it was, fighting with siblings over stuff that they wanted. The thing that helped me to sort of coach them through it over the years was showing them, okay, when you get into this, your body gets all hot, or your speech is like so fast. Like we would try to focus on the body sensations later on after somebody spiraled out. And they could usually, even the younger kids, they could usually say stuff like, well, I felt really disappointed, or I felt really upset and mad or whatever about this thing. And it would usually come from the teenagers in whatever moment, even if it seemed unrelated to their dad, the teenagers would say, I think it's because dad always did this, right? I think it's because dad always tricked us about going somewhere fun. Or I think it's because whenever we went to that store, dad would hurt someone in the car on the way home. Or, they would start naming the physical abuse as well as the emotional that we had gone through. And it was interesting to me because I didn't have to name or bring up any of that really hard stuff. It was my teenagers bringing it up, and then the younger ones kind of like saying, oh, yeah. And so the way that I played it, really thanks to the Flying Free classes, I would just stay really curious or kind of be like a narrator. And so, or at a visit where my ex would fly up, it was horrendous. They would come home at night, then go to see him for maybe like a 2 or 3 day thing, coming home at night to sleep in the house and then going back to him. And then afterwards for like a week or two, just absolute, really, really hard behaviors and emotions. And they would be saying stuff like, I guess more what the question was, like, dad says that you tricked us all, and dad says you're the abuser. Dad says whatever. And I would just stay in that place of like forcing myself to stay regulated enough, even if it's only like a quarter regulated and 3/4 of me inside is freaking out, just staying on the surface at least, like, okay, and saying, wow, I wonder why he would say that. And it, just like those kind of questions would kind of like kickstart the part of, the kids' brains, I think, to say, oh, yeah, I wonder why. Or I would say, wow, that's different than when he lived with us. Like I heard myself saying that a lot. Or they would have phone calls. My 3 oldest, almost a year ago, cut off all contact with him because legally they're old enough. And but when they were still talking, they would, come out like outraged about all these things. And dad's doing this and he's saying this. And if I said something like, one of those one-liners to observe, then it was almost like this, I don't know, this whole thing would just like fall off of them. You could physically see them just kind of like come to, and they'd start talking, right? And so I didn't have to go through and be like, no, your dad's a manipulator and he tricks people and this is his agenda against me and he needs to look like a good guy and make me the bad guy. And all the stuff that inside was kind of boiling over. And I feel like the best thing that I've seen my kids do about this, out of all the stuff that's changed over the years, because now all but the youngest really spot it. I think I posted it in the forum the other day, because my ex moved like 2 hours away from us a few months ago. I think it was 3 months ago. The younger 2 kids have had a few visits with him. And when they saw him a couple weeks ago, so they're 9 and 12 now, the 9-year-old was telling me that his dad took them to his apartment and said, even though your mom doesn't want you to stay overnight, I have all these treats for you. And he opened a kitchen drawer and it was full of every candy in the world, according to my kids, just full. And he was like, if you stay here, like, one of these trips, I don't have to bring you home. And then he showed them a bedroom. He has a 2-bedroom apartment. And one of them was completely empty. And he said to the 12-year-old, you can tell me on Amazon, like send me the links to stuff you want. I'll buy you a bed, posters, every toy, every video game, like just trying to hook them in, right? To
Yeah.
staying overnight. And so on the ride home, when my kids are telling me this, the 12-year-old is disgusted and he's like, I'm just gonna get dad to buy the most expensive bed and tell him I like all this like stuff. And I was like, wait, why are you doing that? You know that you're not allowed to stay overnight. He was like, no, I want to run out his money. If he's stupid enough to think that I'll, stay when the judge says no. And then the even better part was when the 9-year-old was like, the candy drawer. Mom, you have to let me stay there. I'll never get that much candy for the rest of my life. And the 12-year-old just said, you know who does that with candy, trying to get kids with candy like that? Pedophiles and kidnappers.
Your 12-year-old is on fire, man. Seriously.
I
He's
know.
amazing.
It was so good. Him and the teenagers, like they're like that whenever the younger one gets kind of still sucked in. And so I really think that because I didn't come on like trying to save them and teach them and explain it all and all the stuff that it would have been my inclination to do at the beginning, I think they learned how to critically think for themselves.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have to go on and on. And it was so freeing too for me when I would say those one-liners. It was like, here, let's let my ex just be shown for what he is. If I say, why do you think he would do that? That's confusing. And then hearing a kid say, oh, I think he's trying to hurt us,
Yes. Have them come up with it because then there's no resistance. I think our kids resist when we tell them how they're supposed to think. They don't, but I think that's human nature for us to just resist what other people tell us that we're supposed to think. But if you can ask questions and get them to come up with the answers, then there's buy-in in their brain. And then that's going to change everything. Okay, Loretta, how do you, you mentioned that you had a teenage son that you struggled, that, had issues. How do you balance empathy? How did you balance empathy for him and what he was going through, and also hold him accountable for his behavior?
So when they would come at me, or whether it was him, being able to have empathy for him, or being able to, well, first of all, stumbling over my words, because that's about how I was when I was going through the middle of it. It was like, Charlotte probably had a little more education than me. I felt like I had one hand tied behind my back, and I was trying to be triangulated. And I knew the triangulation thing. I was educated enough to know that. But when it's happening to you and you're being asked, and they're old enough to ask very pointed questions, and they're programmed religiously, like intensely, you want to be able to answer, because you're taught when they come to you with questions, then you answer, right? But if you answer, you're being triangulated, and you're actually in an argument with them being the conduit with your ex or soon to be ex, right? So I felt like I couldn't answer, but also I was confused in my own mind because I was doing my own deprogramming. So it's hard to take their entire life and explain why maybe it's just not the best way to be thinking about things. Black and white thinking doesn't work, but you're trying to explain this to somebody that maybe doesn't have capacity to understand it, or it's not a one-off conversation. And that's when I had to realize I don't have control over this right now. I can give a little bit of information, but the more I tried to explain, the more I found myself in conversations that were very similar and swirling and familiar as when he lived at home, right? But they were always with him. So when I let go of trying to control things, and like Charlotte said, and started reminding myself that, um, hold on one second, I just got to look at my notes here. I started being able to introduce new thoughts and ideas, but it was the long game. It really was like I told myself, oh, and I coach people on this all the time in the forum. And it's like, remember, look how long it took us to figure this out. Or when people would come and criticize them that they trusted and they were friends with for 20 years, it's like, why are you mad at them? You thought this like 10 years ago. You thought this 2 weeks ago, right? And so knowing that everybody's on their own journey, my kids are on their own journey and God has them.
Yeah.
So I would start to introduce new thoughts and ideas with them, but it wasn't in one go. I had to trust the long process. So over time, I've been able to have conversations with them that were about the love of Jesus, that were, hey, yeah, I'm kind of liking this new Jesus I'm learning about with love. And it makes more sense, this new interpretation I read. And that those are conversations I wasn't able to have with someone who was 10, but I could have it when he turned 14, right? Or he went through something with a girlfriend or with a friend, and then he would come to me asking questions, and I would be able to do it in a way that wasn't me against his dad, but more just introducing an idea. Oh, yeah. Sometimes when people are angry, they might act out in this way, but they don't understand. And how do you want to show up for them? Or, hey, sometimes people just aren't there yet. They have resources, but they're choosing not to take them. What do you want to do if you have resources? Do you want to take those? So it's those life lessons that only come when life happens. But when you're going through the middle of the chaos, you think you have to fix it all at once. I have to deprogram these kids. I only have 3 years of them in my home, right? And you're living with all of this regret. It's very hard. Yeah, it's hard. But at the same time, I like looking back, it's crazy to see how far I've come and what I've been through. And the more I have grown, the more I've learned, the more I know I don't know, and I don't have to know. And when I share that with them, they're open and they're learning actually that they don't have to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
So we're not operating out of fear anymore, right? When I'm operating out of fear, I do not show up. I want to show up. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
say about that.
And to always remember that the journey for them, it continues past their time with us. You know, we don't have to get it all right while they're with us. They're going to have their whole lifetimes to work on that, just like we have. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about boundaries right now. And I'm going to just answer this question because no one put their name by it. So I definitely think it's an important question to talk about. So these are some ideas of and if for anyone who doesn't understand boundaries, I think we come into the topic of boundaries sometimes thinking that a boundary is what we set for someone else. We say, you can't do this around me and you can't do that around me. Well, that's actually not what a boundary is. They can totally do those things around you because they get to choose how they show up in their lives, and you really don't have any control over that. You can wish you had control over it, but you really don't. So boundaries are really what we set up to keep ourselves safe. They're our own, what we're going to do. If they do that, then what are we going to do? So here are some ideas of ways that you can set boundaries around protecting your kids emotionally, even if you can't control what happens at dad's house. Number one, you can have a boundary around your own reactions to what you're hearing. And by the way, I wasn't always very successful at all of these. So I'm putting these forward. I'm not, as in the aspect of that I am not perfect at these things. I don't think any of the women here are perfect at these things. These are things that we have to work on and work towards. But kids often, as we talked about before, they'll often unload their fear and their anger at home with us. And our boundary for us is that we don't take it personally. We don't absorb this as a personal indictment against ourselves or our identities or our parenting. We can remind ourselves, this is their emotional storm that they're having. This is not about my failure. And then when you can stay regulated, as Charlotte gave some examples, and so did Loretta, that is when you're going to be able to be there, be present for them then in that. it also demonstrates to them that their feelings are survivable. Even though they're having these big, huge emotions, it's not too much. It's not like too overwhelming. I have to say, I have failed a lot in this because sometimes I've had a couple of kids who have mental health issues, and it does feel like even as teenagers and older people, and it does feel like the storm is a hurricane, and it does feel like it's going to blow me away. So this is something that I'm still working on. But another boundary is truth telling. Kids get gaslit in the destructive home. So your boundary is to say, okay, maybe they're experiencing that over there, but over here in my home, I'm going to be a truth teller. If they're told over there, mom doesn't love you, or you're too sensitive, or you're a naughty person, you can calmly counter that with the reality when they're in your presence by saying, that's not true. I love you no matter what. It's okay to feel things deeply. And you are not a naughty person. You are a good person. You have a good heart, and you're just doing the best that you can. So you don't even really need to campaign against dad. You just need to help them when they're with you to anchor them in what's actually really true. Another boundary is be predictable. You can set a boundary for yourself that in my home, life is going to be predictable. Maybe over there, it's all about candy one day and getting, having the rug pulled out from you another day. But your home can be a place where there's rhythm, where there's meals and bedtime and check-ins and even rituals like Saturday night movie with mom or Sunday morning pancakes. Predictability is an emotional safety net for our kids. What about a boundary of respecting their voice? Maybe over at dad's house, they don't have much of a voice and there is no respect for their thoughts and perspectives. But with you say, I honor my children's opinions and feelings. I can't always give them what they want, but I understand why they want those things, and I honor that. Your thoughts matter to me. This is what you're communicating to them. Another boundary is around what you share. Sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, we over-explain adult problems because we need to vent to someone. So a protective boundary is separating our adult worries, like our finances or our legal battles or our drama around dealing with our ex, from our kids' worries. And that way they're not carrying loads that aren't theirs. And then finally, a boundary of having compassion, but with limits. You're not their punching bag. You can say, I see that you're upset, but I won't let you scream in my face, but I'm here when you're ready to talk and snuggle, and give them some space and give yourself some space. Safety with boundaries teaches them that love does not mean chaos and limits don't mean rejection. And that's really important for them to know. All right. So I think we'll do one last question. How do you ladies take care of yourself in the middle of all of this, in the middle of dealing with ex drama, but also with the drama that your kids bring to the table, so that you are coming from a place when you're caring for your kids and showing them love, we're talking about younger kids right now, so that you feel filled up and not depleted all the time. Give us some ideas.
Go ahead, Loretta. I'll go after you.
Okay. We probably have the same answer. No, maybe not. So one thing number one, educating myself, I've surrounded myself with people who grow, who are in similar situations as me, who have a growth mindset. I'm always listening to podcasts in the car. I've learned habit stacking from our lovely Diana in one of her podcasts about, I now have a child who is in an elite sport where I find myself driving 4 hours a day and waiting 3 hours for him. So I habit stacked exercising while he's training, I'm training, right? And I'm also listening to podcasts on the way up and on the way back. I'm educating myself. Or I'm talking to a friend who is better than a counselor. It's so great to catch up with an old friend. And I've surrounded myself with people who get it, who have a growth mindset, who have curiosity, who aren't judgmental. And so those safe spaces just fill you up to where all that anxiety, you don't live with it all day long. And I've learned to recognize in my body when I have a tingle going down my arm, there's some rejection coming up. So where do I need to process that? When I have my chest starts getting tight, or I wake up like with grinding my teeth, obviously I've got anxiety. What am I thinking? What am I sorting through? And I take care of that with a friend, a counselor, doing my own mind shift tool work or running models. I also, this is a big one, people pleasing. I have stopped, well, I'm recovering people pleaser. It's, I worry about what people think. I'm always wanting to do things for people. And just, I have given myself permission to just let go of that. In fact, the other day, the cops, I got a message and I was told when I got home, the cops had showed up at my house again. And I'm like, what? And what happened was my level, like I was on the phone with someone, they're like, you don't seem very upset about this. Like this is kind of, and I said, this is not my first rodeo. Like it didn't even elevate, but my child had been playing video games and his window was open and he was yelling to his friends.
Oh no. I can just imagine because I've heard things.
Do a well check. And I'm like, and when I got home, I just started laughing and I said, you were just jealous because you're the only one that hasn't had the cops come and talk to you. All laughing, and it didn't become this big huge thing. So because I wasn't worried about what people thought in the neighborhood, because we do have nosy neighbors, just like you just beyond that, you just can't pick and choose, you just don't deal with the small stuff anymore, right? And anyway, so one thing too, I want to say one more thing is your kids do not want to be controlled. I had two tell me, Mom, I just don't, even though I was gonna go do that, now that you told me I have to do it, I don't want to do it.
Yep.
Recognizing that, sometimes you got to just hear them and listen to them and be curious, and you can't control anyway, so why bother?
That's funny. I'm going to tie that in to understanding our kids' needs is part of taking care of ourselves too. I'm going to hit on that. I want to mention though, Loretta, you mentioned that you heard the habit stacking from me, which I got from books, Atomic Habits, and then there was another book I pulled some stuff from. But that was actually a training that I did in the Kaleidoscope for Flying Higher, which is still there. So if any of the listeners are wanting to hear how to add healthy habits on a daily basis to change how you take care of yourself in your life, that is what was it? It was a weekend training I did in the Kaleidoscope earlier this year. So that's available for any of you who decide to join Flying Higher, which Natalie always tells you about at the end, which I highly recommend. I'm going to be a member for as long as it exists. So taking care of yourself has to be number one, where I think it's going to get talked about in episode 11 this season as well, a little bit about taking care of yourself. And I have some ideas of what I might say there, but it is not selfish. That's what I want to say. It's not selfish. Selfish is when we are elevating our own needs as way more important than other people, and we think we're someone special and we deserve better than them. That's not what self-care is. Self-care is taking responsibility for the body that God gave you, taking responsibility for the soul that God gave you, for the mind that God gave you, saying, I care who you made me to be so much that I'm going to give myself what I need. I care for this creation that you made, God. And so I ask myself all the time, what do I need? Yes, this comes up in parenting when you're all stressed out, when the kids do all their things. A lot of, everyone here has been through the ringer. I didn't tell as many of my stories here, in part because I told my kids I wouldn't tell some of their stories. But boy, have I been through the ringer. I was just talking about it with somebody else yesterday because she's got some young boys and there's yelling in her home and how stressful that is. But all through it, I got better and better at figuring out what do I need? What do I need? What do I need? And we can navigate how to take care of our own needs and model it to our kids as we do it. Don't be afraid to speak it out loud as well. Like if your kids are pushing back at you, it's like, listen, buddy, I love you so, so much. And I care so much about what you're going through. And I've got to take a breather to take care of me so I can keep showing up for you. I want to get better. I would tell my kids, I want to get better at this mom thing. I want to get better at navigating the hard moments and when you're struggling and when I'm struggling. So I need a breather right now. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a massage. I'm going to be taking care of me. Go ahead and let your kids see it as well. So
Yeah.
I guess that's everything I have to say on that one.
Before we close, you guys, I want to actually talk, just like Diana mentioned, I want to invite you to join us inside of the Flying Higher program for divorced Christian women who are eager to rebuild their lives from the ground up. The work that you do on yourself, and I think all of the women here would attest to this, it's going to have a direct and profound impact on how you show up in your parenting. You can go to joinflyinghigher.com to learn more. Here's one of our Flying Higher members recently wrote this to us. She said, I want to express how thankful I am for Natalie and her honesty and transparency. I believe that has helped me more than anything. Natalie, if you came across as having arrived and not having ongoing challenges within yourself and in your family, I would feel like I'm missing the mark and I'm working very hard in vain and I'm just a total loser. But because you're so honest, I have hope that this is all part of the journey and I press on. I'm glad that she said that. Because sometimes I wonder, maybe I say too many things about how I'm a hot mess half the time, but I'm glad it's helpful. I am thankful to have finished my grueling divorce this year. I have to say that there are so many more hard times, too many to begin to talk about. But even though I'm not in the forum, I have been doing the courses, taking notes and implementing the materials. I just want to say cut in here and say that some people join and they dive into the forum and they like to talk to everybody else and they maybe don't do the courses. And so they tend to kind of roil around in what they're already dealing with. And it's so hard to watch them suffer. But others get in and they aren't in the forum interacting, which is fine. You can interact if you want to, and you can have access to all of these people that are here right now on this episode, and we can help you. But they are doing the courses. This is kind of what I do when I join programs. I usually go in and I'm not necessarily talking to everyone else, but I am like feeding off of whatever the teachers are teaching and taking the notes and learning and implementing what I'm learning. And those are the people that then they eventually come into the forum and they're like, oh my word, I can't believe what's happening in my life as I'm taking these courses. So here's what else she says. Something that spoke a lot to me this summer when I was dealing with deep betrayal and abandonment emotions, which also brought shame, was in the health course when Natalie talked about going through the hell of hard emotions and facing them head on. That's what I decided to do. I decided to run into the storm like those buffalo do. Even though I had worked hard until that point to heal and to grieve, Natalie's teaching in this course helped me to become more aware of these really hard emotions that made me still run to Band-Aids during very intense times. Also, my body has been stuck for years now, and I had some extra weight that didn't come off no matter what. I felt very stuck, hopeless, and defeated about losing these extra pounds, even though I really didn't have a lot to lose. I eat healthy foods, so I knew my hormones were messed up from all the trauma that went on for so many years, even during the separation and divorce. There's a part in the health course regarding setting a goal to lose weight and resetting your body and losing weight with intermittent fasting. So I set a goal and I've been doing intermittent fasting for about 18 hours a day. I also go for brisk walks even while I'm fasting. I could not believe the energy and amazing feeling I had. I walked faster than ever, even in the hot sun. And one of the biggest bonuses, besides feeling so empowered by my efforts and success, is that I have lost lots of weight in a very short amount of time and can wear clothes I've not been able to wear for years. And I haven't stopped there. My brain is looking for more dopamine hits. I have cleaned out decades of stuff that I dreaded facing and believed that my brain could not deal with until I began the life skills course, which I am doing now. I am still facing challenges with decluttering certain areas and items, but I am determined to reach my goals now. I am doing all of this in the midst of hard times that would have left me stuck and immobilized before. I am choosing to change how I think so that I get different results. And every win and victory just make my brain crave more. I love flying higher. I love the fact that I can find courses on whatever I'm dealing with and be guided in changing my mindset so I can reach new heights. and not be defeated by what's going on around me. So that's an example of someone who's doing the courses, making the changes, and actually experiencing her entire life start to turn around and change. Not just while she's in the middle of working through flying higher, but when she leaves flying higher, she's going to take all of these skills with her, and they're going to impact the rest of her life. So if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in doing, you want that for your life, well, we can help you get that for your life. Go to at an affordable price too, I might add. Just go to joinflyinghigher.com to learn more. Thank you, ladies, for joining me for this episode. And thanks for listening. Until next time, fly higher.